Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. Two soda counter workers, a local radio station, and a mysterious murder. This week we're going back to 1942 for a comedy mystery film called Whodunit, starring Bud Abbott, Lou Costello, Patrick Knowles, and Louise Albritton. And this is directed by Earl C. Kenton. Our story begins this week at the General Broadcasting System, or GBS, a local radio station's headquarters. Chick Larkin, played by Bud Abbott, and Mervyn Milgram, played by Lou Costello, work behind the soda counter at the Radio Center drugstore. And there's a really funny part in this where Lou tries to make a Lindbergh cheese sandwich. Their true passion, however, is to become writers on the GBS radio mystery show called Murder at Midnight. They attend by sneaking in to that evening's radio program story called The Steel Chair Murder Case, with one of the writers, Jimmy Turner, played by Patrick Knowles, and the producer, Jane Little, played by Louise Albritton. As the show begins, the executive director, Colonel J.R. Andrews, is mysteriously electrocuted after picking up the mic while sitting on a steel chair. Sound familiar? Seeing an opportunity, Chick and Mervyn impersonate detectives and attempt to solve the crime with the help of Juliet Collins, who works for the station. Meanwhile, Police Lieutenant Moran and Detective Brannigan, two real detectives, consider the fake detectives to be prime suspects. A prolonged chase ensues throughout the studio, and the body of Dr. Merrick, Andrew's personal physician, is also discovered. Now we have two murders. Chick and Mervyn eventually flee the studio, however, but hear on the radio that Mervyn has apparently won $10,000 on the GBS's Wheel of Fortune radio program. Is a really funny part where they're in a phone booth and they can't get the call through. Chick and Mervyn return to the studio, however, under the 5-minute deadline and claim their prize, only to be arrested by the real detectives. Meanwhile, Turner and Little have been doing their own investigating and managed to convince everyone, including the detectives, to reenact the radio program that led to the murders, so the true culprit might crack under pressure. And I think I'm doing the same. So, did the writer of the Steel Chair Murder Case bring the story to life? Does a murder reenactment cause someone to crack? Or do two bumbling fake detectives prove their worth? Well, we'll see. Released November 6, 1942, film historian and critic Leonard Maltin calls Whodunit one of their best. It's the first movie that doesn't include a musical number, giving the boys more screen time. Yes, there's no Andrews Sisters in this one. This film was a Saturn Award nominee in 2009 for Best DVD Collection, and film critic Rotten Tomatoes gave this film an 85% rating, making such claims as one of the earliest and one of the best, an amazing comedy with hilarious jokes, Abbott and Costello at their best, one fun watch with the duo at the top of their game, and the dynamic duo have done it again. Yes, they have, and if you enjoyed the Abbott and Costello one I did this time last year, Hold That Ghost, you'll enjoy this one as well. I'll have the link below for Hold That Ghost. And the trivia question this week: before starting another film, was there a tour started by members of the cast of our film? Before starting another film, was there a tour started by members of the cast of our film? So a little more history and the answer to our trivia question coming up next. Now, our film's murder mystery was set in a radio station. Many of the stars themselves were radio actors as well, making them the subject of this week's history. So the golden age of radio was an era of radio in the United States where it was the dominant electronic medium. It began with the birth of commercial radio broadcasting in the early 1920s. and lasted through the 1950s, when television gradually superseded radio as the medium of choice for scripted programming, variety, and dramatic shows. And first on our list, the stars of our film, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, were an American comedy duo whose work in radio, film, and television made them the most popular comedy team of the 1940s and 1950s, and the highest paid entertainers in the world during the Second World War. The team's first known radio broadcast was on The Kate Smith Show on February 3, 1938, with their patter routine, Who's on First, being considered one of the greatest comedy routines of all time. And you can find this routine on YouTube, where it's also in their film, and the film version is The Naughty 90s in 1945. The duo debuted with their own radio show, The Abbott and Costello Show, on July 3, 1940, a 30-minute weekly comedy program that ran until June 9, 1949. Next on our list, William Gargan, who played Police Lieutenant Lou Morin, was an American film, television, and radio actor. Gargan's first radio role was Captain Flagg on Captain Flagg and Sergeant Quirt in 1942, and also portrayed Ross Dolan in Ideal in Crime from 1946 until 1947. Gargan also played pipe-smoking detective Martin Kane Private Eye, a show so popular it was shot for TV and separately done for radio, running from 1949 to 1952. Another huge hit for him was NBC Radio's detective drama Barry Craig, Confidential Investigator, which ran from 1951 to 1955. And lastly, William Bendix, who plays Detective Brannigan in our film, was a rough and ready American film, radio, and television actor, appearing in many films, including 2 film noirs with Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake, The Glass Key in 1942 and The Blue Dahlia in 1946. Bendix was also popular on the radio. The Life of Riley was a big radio hit from 1940 to 1951. Bendix played the title role of blundering Chester A. Riley in this American radio situation comedy series that was adapted into a 1949 feature film, also starring William Bendix, as well as 2 different TV series and a comic book. And I'm sure that comic book is worth a fortune today. And the answer to our trivia question this week, before starting another film, was there a tour started by members of the cast of our film? Yes, and it was our stars again, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. In 1942, their movies Ride 'em Cowboy, Pardon My Sarong, and Who Done It outdid the previous year's revenue, and the duo were crowned Hollywood's #1 box office stars, topping Clark Gable and Gary Cooper. That's a big deal. Before shooting their next film, It Ain't Hay, based on a short story, Abbott and Costello went on a tour selling war bonds across the country. And if you're not sure what war bonds are, well, they were debt securities issued by the government to finance military operations in times of war without raising taxes to an unpopular level. The Treasury Department credited the boys with selling $85 million worth of bonds in only 34 days. Just amazing. I'd like to take this time to thank my new subscribers for jumping on board and helping my channel. Thanks very much. I gotta go. I gotta check on the boys and see how they're making out as fake detectives. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you back next week.
We've got to find out who murdered Colonel Andrews. Maybe he was murdered by some of his enemies.
He had no enemies.
Then he was murdered by some of his friends.
He had no friends.
Well, then he was murdered by some strangers. He must have had strangers.